Hello and welcome back to How I Got on Broadway. Today we are so excited to welcome HR business partners, CEOs, and co-founders of K+K Reset, the incredibly inspiring duo, Kiah Jones and Karen Robinson. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Oh, so happy to be here. Thank you, Uchenna.
Of
Yes,
course.
we're so excited to be here today.
Yay, how are you guys doing today?
Feeling good.
Yeah, me too. All right, so with a combined history of over 50 plus years in training and development and on 134 shows and counting,
Yes.
there's no doubt that we have a lot to get into, so I'm just going to jump right in.
All right.
I'm going to start with a question I've actually never asked you both. Did either of you grow up doing theater? How did the art form find you?
I'll start. I did not grow up doing theater. I grew up as a student on Long Island in a school that would bring us in to see the theater, multiple shows a year, but in terms of being a performer or on stage or backstage, that was not my experience.
Yeah, well, I remember in the suburbs of Southwest London, I went to pantomimes and enjoyed, when we did have theater as a class, the Ode Vic would bring their old costumes. So that gave me a little taste. And then later on, as a young adult, I did take a few acting classes.
Ooh.
And, slight bug, but then I just went into corporate head on.
Mhm. Yeah, because I thought you both had connections to the city, right? Kiah, you're from
Long Island.
Long Island.
Yeah.
And Karen, you
And
spent time.
Yeah, oh no, I've been in the city many, many years.
Yeah. Growing up, did either of you think you would end up working on Broadway?
No, definitely not.
Far from it.
Yeah. So what do you feel like attracted you to eventually entering the space?
I think it's connected. So Karen and I, we launched our business in 2019, and our sweet spot was startups, nonprofits, and we did a little bit of work with recruiting independently for different organizations. And what we loved about startups is that there's really no infrastructure, right? There's no structure at all. We had the ability to build and to develop and to design and then also to implement. And so we as HR professionals and HR business partners, that's what we love, doing the full cycle of the work. And I think what was appealing about Broadway is that every production is very much like a startup. There wasn't a lot of HR structure at all or process at all, so we were able to do those things, right? Design, develop, and implement while partnering with the production teams, to give them the HR infrastructure that they so desperately needed.
Yeah, and what I'll add to that, I think during the pandemic and the social isolation that was happening, and also helping corporate teams go into this isolated more world, and then coming out of that, and with all the things that was happening when it came to racism and all the other isms, Broadway came back and tried to be really intentional. So it was a real beautiful meeting of the minds in that moment, and no one knew what they were doing. We were building the plane and flying it at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I wanted to ask, coming into the theater world kind of largely after the COVID-19 pandemic, what were you walking into? What did you kind of see as the effects of what the COVID-19 pandemic did to these artists whose industry was shut down indefinitely?
Yeah, I'll start. I'll kick it off. Well, the thing is, they never had Broadway. I mean, they never had HR Broadway. And so we saw a lot of fear. There's fear from general management level all the way to company management on the productions, because no one knew how to really utilize us. Some people were more open, some leaders were more open, and there had been so much harm that no one was talking about. So we started to uncover all these different things happening to people, and having to deal with now these folks that have support, and how do they utilize it. Stop there.
I think that's spot on. I was also thinking fear, and certainly fear related to COVID, because shows were scared of being closed down, right? And shows were closed down, some of them, because they were sick and the swings weren't available, or dealing with the actual cast members and the swings who were very afraid for their own health. And there's a lot of inability to implement the right processes to support a show if it were impacted by COVID. People eventually, got a hang of it, but it was just, it was kind of wild actually
Yeah.
at the time. Exciting from an HR perspective because
Yeah.
there was so much work for us. We were very busy. We very quickly
Yeah.
were very busy grinding it out day after day.
But
It-
loving it, though.
Loving it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there were some days where we would sit down at our computers and not stand up for 12 hours straight.
Yeah. Yeah, it was not unusual to have 16 to 20 meetings daily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that comes challenges.
Oh, yeah.
What do you feel like were the most challenging parts of the process as you were making that switch from the more corporate startup world into commercial theater?
I mean, I think there were some hurdles, but nothing that felt overwhelming. Certainly, we weren't from the Broadway or the commercial theater world, so learning the language and understanding it, making sure we understood the lingo, making sure we understood people's roles and how that worked inside of each production. There was a learning curve there, of course. I think we had the challenge of, as Karen was just mentioning, people knowing how to work with us. Company managers, general managers, each, wondering, if having us meant that they weren't good at their jobs or that they couldn't do their jobs. I think that because we are Black women, a challenge for us, and maybe it was the biggest challenge, Karen, tell me what you think, was when we realized that more often than not, for a time period, a lot of people were using us when they had issues with people of color. Right, and so learning from that about the lack of communication and what the relationships had looked like prior to 2020, that was interesting and challenging for us because, most shows didn't have a cast that was very diverse. And when they would, and they would have an issue, there were fears around how to communicate with those people. So we had to mitigate the fears of some of the leaders as well as the cast and then learn ourselves just how to manage that, because I think that we took on a lot of the emotion from that.
Yeah, there was no derolling. And the performative piece was hard because we were having to teach who we were and still be able to show up for those people very intentionally and protect them. And while trying to protect ourselves, there was just a lot of pull in different directions. And the good thing is that we had each other because we didn't have to look externally to make sure that we were taking care of each other. And I mean, there were times when we couldn't take care of ourselves as much because we were just so busy. But there was a lot of old baggage. And then there was new baggage because when we would go and we would train and people would see Black women and just to see people's faces on the screen when we show up, even today, but especially then, it was almost an outcry like, thank you, in many ways.
Yeah. And so now, 6.5 years into it, what are the ways that you take care of yourself and advocate for yourself, especially as Black women, Black business owners in the commercial theater industry that we know is widely not as diverse as we want it to be, in those moments where HR is being weaponized and utilized in ways that aren't best practice? How do you take care of yourself and protect your company?
Well, I use this lovely 2-letter word. It's called no.
I was thinking about no.
I think I really just started using it in 2025, right? This year. But when I say no, I say no when it means our team is bogged down with too many trainings in a day and in a week. I say no when we're being asked to do things last minute that are completely out of the realm of what we're supposed to be doing. I say no when we're expected to be therapists and psychiatrists. I say no when people want discounts, but they want the benefit of our expertise and our race and gender to help them solve their problems. And I enjoy saying no. That's helped.
Yeah, no, it's so funny. I think about it. I say we're more intentional. We don't ask for an invite to our own party anymore. So we do things. We tell you this is going to be the recommendation, this is what we're doing. There's no longer waiting for you to hem and haw about something you don't know about and waste time, especially when harm is happening. So I think we've been more intentional. I think we've learned how to help even our outside partners to move into the space with us, and coming from spaces such as coaching and training and even our legal team where they never were in this space before. So yeah, no invite to our own personal party.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I always say no is a full sentence.
That's
Yes,
right.
it is.
But moving into a moment where a yes was given, in 2021, you got your first Broadway client, Moulin Rouge.
Mhm.
Can you tell us about what the journey was to getting there, getting to that first contract?
Oh gosh, it feels fast. It feels like it just happened out of nowhere.
Yeah. But I think the process was fast, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the general management team was referred to us by someone who we still don't know. If you're out there,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah.
And please let us know who you are so we can thank you directly.
We give good
This
gifts.
unknown, wonderful human being that changed our lives referred us. And, you know, we had the customary meetings, introductions. We met with several layers of the producing team. And it was funny, Karen, because they had decided we were hired before the last meeting, but they didn't tell us. And so we're all on the meeting,
Still prepping.
and Karen and I, you know, we're ready for it. And it was just, finally, I think someone said, well, we want you to start. We're like, okay, great. We'll start. Because I think it was such a new thing. And there was an awkwardness, and sometimes still is with producing teams that haven't worked with HR, because there is that lack of understanding until you go through an HR experience and you partner with us and you see how it is. So that was actually pretty quick. We got ramped up pretty quickly. It was great because Moulin Rouge was on stage before the pandemic. So it was about bringing people back and what that looked like. And they also had their whole original cast,
Yeah.
right? And then they won the Tonys, Best Musical that year.
Yeah.
So
And it was also still COVID protocols in place and all of those things. I think what helped Kiah and I transition into it, being in a new industry, was that we had this term, we go, we get. And so every door we walked into, it was with confidence, with our heads up high, knowing that we were at the table and we were bringing something, and it didn't matter. And if you didn't like us being at the table, we'd walk away. And so I think that just having that naturally helped us come into this space, and a new space. And then we're also really good people and kind and sweet. So
sometimes.
I can attest to always.
she's sweeter than she wants you to know. But anywho, but more importantly, I think we got a lot of commitment and people understanding us very quickly, that we were there to make their lives better and not get in their way. Yeah.
I'll also add, the truth is we're very smart. You know, we had the benefit of having experience working with lots of different startups, right? So entertainment, hair care, real estate, legal, you name it. You know, we had that type of client, whether it was from when we worked together or from our previous lives. So learning a new industry, learning the new logo, picking up things quickly, that's part of our DNA. So that part wasn't a challenge at all.
Yeah, and then previously it was really corporate, right? So it was Fortune 100 and 500 companies. It was lots of structure.
We got tired of that.
Well, we were going to dismantle that. But it didn't work. And it didn't work for people that looked like us. And so that was just one of the core, was like, we're going to narrate our own story, especially for those who look and feel like us.
And it was also the type of HR we didn't want to do anymore, right? The type of HR that doesn't advocate for all of the employees.
Yeah.
Which we get to do now.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you two just exude confidence. I feel like every room you walk into, there's no doubt about who you are and what you do. You guys are very definite in that, and I take so much inspiration from that working with you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Jenna.
Of course.
You exude confidence too.
I'm trying. I'm learning from the best, you know?
Go on.
On the other side of that, going into your first Broadway show, what were you most apprehensive about?
Goodness, what we didn't know, right? But we didn't worry about what we didn't know. We focused more on what we did know and what we were bringing to it, and it was small bites. You know, it wasn't like trying to take on everything and figuring out and coming in with such gusto. It was coming in, being humble, but also like curious. We are still today always very curious, you know, and that's how I think that helped. What would you say?
I just jumped right in. I don't recall any real apprehension, to be honest with you. I really don't. I don't think that we had it. We were excited.
Yeah.
You know, when you launch your business and you've been working in a corporate setting for so long, at least for us, if this was true, everything is a gift. The excitement is constant, and it all belonged to us. I couldn't have been, it was the happiest time of my life.
Yeah, it still is.
It still is.
No, it's true. It's true. And we knew they didn't know what we knew. They just don't know. And so that gave us, I think, even more confidence. And also we know what our intention is, and we knew what the action was going to be. You know.
How soon after Moulin Rouge did you sign your next client that was a Broadway show?
Oh goodness, it was like,
It wasn't very long. It started it started to
Was it
snowball,
fast? Yeah.
I wouldn't say,
Yeah.
but it started to snowball a little bit. We sort of went one general management house at a time type of thing.
yeah,
And until we got to about 5, I think,
yeah,
something like that, 5 GM houses. Yeah, I would say that first year, and it was by the end of the year, I think we had about 14 shows before the tours.
yeah.
And in that moment, did you feel like your company was going to transform? Did you feel like Broadway was really going to be a space that you were going to have ownership in, honestly, at this point?
Well, we maintained a lot of other clients at that same time.
Yeah.
We did have a few corporate clients that we were still working with. And I think in the first year, I would say no.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that probably didn't happen until maybe the second or third year, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think because what would happen is like we'd get one show, right, and then the GMs would give us the different shows in that house, and then we'd go to another GM house. But then it was like when the new show came in, now we're in a cycle. And I think that's when things started to pick up, and especially when we still had the same show. And it's beautiful actually having Moulin Rouge because we still have it from the beginning. And to see the growth projectile as well. I think that's when we realized, okay, we're in this space.
I'll never forget when we went to opening night for Moulin Rouge after the reopening. I just cried because I also hadn't seen a Broadway show in many, many years, and I didn't know what to expect. And for anybody who has not seen Moulin Rouge, and I just have to say it, that's a musical, right?
Yes.
The dancing, the costumes, the
music.
performances, it is outstanding. And I just sat there and cried, and I looked at Karen and I said, this has been worth every single moment. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when I think I was really, really bitten. Even though I had seen shows as a child, I think that's really when I got that bug for Broadway, seeing Moulin Rouge the first time.
Yeah, and also, even if there were issues, just knowing the people and just seeing their talent and just knowing that we are helping them. I think that was it for us too. Because it's immediate. You can immediately see it.
Yeah. And I think Moulin Rouge is some of the most fun you can have in a theater on Broadway.
Yes.
And speaking of fun, I want to talk about our trainings for a moment.
Okay.
It
Yes.
it almost feels wrong when people ask me what they're like because I'm like, well, they're fun. Yes, it's sexual harassment, discrimination, and bullying training. But what K+K does with the training is honestly something kind of magical because people usually walk out with a smile on their face. Can you both share a little about why you decided to approach the training the way you do and if they've always been the way they are now?
Right. So one of our services was always to, when we launched the consulting business, was to provide the anti-harassment training. So we had a program already, and then when we got to Broadway, with Moulin Rouge especially, we had to start tailoring it, right? Like we had to start using the right job titles for things. I even think the first one we didn't use a couple of the right job titles as we were figuring things out. We had to have scenarios that made sense to the industry because we've all sat through those sad, tired trainings with a monotone person who, where you're falling asleep and you're actually not retaining any of the information. And over time, obviously, the training has grown and grown, but we knew immediately that we had to tailor it for the industry, and that meant adding skits. That meant having, real life scenarios. That meant having more of a call response and open session as much as possible versus a lecture.
And we're incredibly funny.
Yes.
Nobody
Yes.
knew how funny we were.
Comedians.
Well, when prior to Broadway, we used to have social hours online, and I mean, customized Jeopardy, all these kinds of things, because we wanted always to have that connection, that human connection, and we always say that adults, they just have a little bit more fun when it's not hard and it's something they can remember. They'll, if you give them those moments in small bite sizes, but make it light and relatable, you're going to remember it. So that's where that comes from.
Yeah. And speaking of lessons, overall, what are some of the biggest lessons you feel like you've learned through your corporate work and through your commercial theater work?
So many. Gosh.
I know, I'm not sure where to start.
I know. I could say a few things, and then we might even go toggle back and forth. A lesson I took from corporate that I brought here that I still feel is so important is to assume positive intent and to meet people where they are versus where you think they should be. And I think that's two that I will start off with that I think about in terms of some of the lessons, but there's so many.
I think most initially, at least about lessons that I've learned as an individual, as a person, as an HR business partner, the importance of remaining objective. Some of the work that we do involves investigations, and we hear sometimes some truly awful things about behaviors, and so it can be hard to remain objective, but that's the most important thing until you get to the end of the investigation. So remaining objective, constantly being self-aware and self-regulating, because we can have a lot of very heavy topics and emotional calls, and it's important that we're managing them effectively and efficiently. And I think that always having sort of the teacher cap on a little bit, because, and by teacher I mean sometimes it's a little bit therapist, it's a mixture of things, but there's a lot of guidance that we provide to all levels of the people that we're dealing with, and so it requires using all of our experience to help educate people and try to help people in these moments when they're not showing up as their best selves.
And also being like a really strong ethical leader. Even if something we not quite understand, but we know it's so important to that person, is really being a true advocate, co-conspirator, whatever word you want to say, that shows that I'm not centering myself. I am centering the person, I am centering the issue. And that also requires constantly looking at one's mindset, reevaluating your own behavior, reevaluating how you show up, and just being cognizant of that, because they have to match. When your personality is not matching in the work as it does when you're not at work, that's when you get stress, period. And so that's some of the things too, that we think about.
Yeah, I would also add the importance of listening and getting back to that curiosity, which you started off talking about earlier, Karen, because we recently hired our Director of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Accessibility, the fabulous Brian Harlan Brooks. And because Brian has been a performer and a choreographer, et cetera, Brian has taught us more about what the experience of the performers is actually like. And sometimes when he's sharing how grueling it can be, how confusing it can be, what the struggle can be, it's made us reflect on some of the past issues that we've handled, where we realize, that is an understanding that we didn't know in that moment in the past. Now we have a better understanding. So when these situations come up and someone says, my body is torn because I'm performing 8 nights a week and no one seems to understand that, our understanding of that has been so enhanced. I'm so grateful for that additional education so that now I know how to better advocate for that person.
And just talking about that too, listening is so important. Listening is so close to being loved, and people don't realize that sometimes. And when someone comes to you and the first thing someone says, well, that didn't happen, or are you sure, and invalidating their experience, you can't do that. And that's one of the things we've learned and we really make sure we don't do in any way, shape, or form, and teach leaders not to do, is to invalidate the experience, because then not only will, even if you try and rectify and cause, make some solution, you've now broken trust. So, listening is so important.
Yeah. Theater is a really hard industry to work in and make it a career for the rest of your life. And just thinking about some of the cases that we've worked on, it's really hard to imagine a world pre-KK without that kind of support on the ground with them, because it is just, it's hard emotionally, physically, mentally, just so many things. Can you speak at all to what the world before you guys entered the space was like? Like, what was HR support for these LLCs?
It was all on the poor company managers and the general managers, I presumably, but mostly the company managers trying to balance the 15 jobs that they already have, as well as manage interpersonal issues. Presumably people were also going to the unions perhaps more at the time, but in terms of the expertise and the solutions-driven mindset, I'm not sure how many human resources cases, I'll call it, were managed effectively, just because of time and lack of people power to get it done. Yeah. And trust, right? If you're having an issue, there could be a million reasons why you wouldn't take it to your company manager.
Yeah. And to add to the company manager was the production stage manager, depending on how strong they were. They took on a lot of it, and sometimes the general managers. Especially sometimes when we join new ones, they still think that they have these HR expertise, and quite quickly they realize they don't. But it was something that they just thought, oh, I can schedule, I can do HR. No. It's a whole discipline.
It is, yeah. There are so many things that I can think of, but what would you both say are the benefits to engaging a team like K+K Reset, especially early in the production process?
Oh, gosh. That gave me chills, sorry.
We always talk about do as much work to productions when we're talking to producers early on, up front as possible. It saves everyone a lot of time, a lot of headache, a lot of money. When you're casting, for example, you spend a little time getting to know the person. Maybe come up with a couple of interview questions, maybe do a reference check. And a real reference check, not how were they? Oh, they were fabulous. Okay, great, I'll hire them too. But how did this person contribute to the culture? Did you have any HR issues with this person? How was this person in terms of how they related to authority? Did you have any complaints? Really ask questions. Is this someone you would hire on your next show? And not just because of their talent, but because of who they are as a person, and again, what they bring to the culture, like real questions. Doing that type of work up front can really help you build a beautiful company if you take the time to do it, versus just getting in that rush mode, which happens so often, where you just hire who happens to be available at the time without any forethought. And I understand sometimes some things can't be helped, but I also know that it takes about 5, sometimes 10 years for a production to get onto Broadway, so that's a lot of time to cultivate the relationships to find the right people, in my opinion. but that's not my side of the job. Um, but doing that upfront work, I think, is really helpful, and that's something that we advocate for. And then having the appropriate policies in place and enforcing them from the top down. I think it's really important, and we're starting to do this more and more, for the producing teams and the creatives to also be at our trainings, right? To have their own separate management trainings, right? To understand what their responsibilities are and how they need to show up in the space. And how while it's about art and the rigor and the beauty of art, it is still a job. It is still a workplace. It is still a place where the employer is responsible for keeping it safe, and that means something. It actually means a whole lot of things. And so if we're not doing that and helping our clients do that, then we're not being then we're not doing our job.
And also realizing that culture is not a stagnant word, right?
Yeah.
You might have the values of the company, the values of the production. How do we now make those behaviors, and how do we now make those practices? And when you take creatives, you can take the choreographer from here and the director from here, and like he said, all these people are coming together fast. They need a moment to understand, all right, I PSM'd over on this show and on this tour. What do I need for this production? What do I need from myself? What is my communication style? I need to convey that. How am I bringing on my team members? Some people might need things where they write it down. Some people need, being really empathetic and kind on how I'm bringing people into the fold. I think it's very important, and we're really key with that, right? And helping people with that, and setting, like, what is this structure look like, and what is the workplace even look like? The workplace moves with the people. It doesn't move with the building. And really sharing all these basic tenets of humanity in the workspace, so that people can have some sort of script that they can now take to another production and make sure that they set folks up. Because the biggest thing is not setting up your team for success. Not only is it foolish, it really is just unkind in so many different ways. And we find that people who do that we are able to support them better and really be there for the folks, because then the folks know that we have as much skin in the game as they do.
And talking about building that structure, it's also imperative to have that set up so that younger and new managers and leaders have something
That's
to
right.
work from once they do enter the space.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask, what's the best advice you feel like you can offer to new leaders and aspiring arts managers, our next wave of company managers, stage managers, even producers?
I think spend time in self-interrogation.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out and try to understand what type of manager you are, right, and where you need to grow. Accept that there are areas that you will need to develop, because you will have a team of people where you need to meet them where they are and help them develop, which means you will have to adjust for people, right? You can't, everyone doesn't need to be managed in the same way based on their skill set, their role, whatever it may be. And I think that that's what's missing everywhere, whatever the industry is people taking enough accountability to say, I can be better in this area with this person. This person has these needs. Let me work on this part of myself. I know I've done this work. It's made a world of difference, but you have to be humble enough to interrogate yourself and to have a level of self-awareness so that you can show up properly for the people on your team. Take the time to work on those, they call them soft skills, but they're the hardest skills. Work on those skills.
Yeah, and realize that every team member, I don't care how basic their job skill is a whole human, and really understand who they are, what that motivates them, and how can you help motivate them and keep that eye on the prize together. Because sometimes you might need to be a cheerleader, sometimes you are a therapist, sometimes you are all of these things, but their shortcomings are your shortcomings.
Mm-hmm.
Really being that accountability partner, really saying that, if I'm going to do this, I'm all the way in, I'm not doing it halfway, not doing it for show, and really understanding that people, they need you to be as strong as you are supposed to be. And if you don't take care of yourself, as Kia's mentioning, you can't be that. I think later in the business, I'm learning more how to take care of myself so I can bring more to the company as well. But I would just say, make sure that they don't invalidate people on their team. They know their person on their team, and they're open to learning. Your team is not the only person who's supposed to be curious. You should be even more curious. And you should also make sure that you are open to new ideas and concepts, understanding the laws, understanding the things, and how do you apply it, and being consistent. If I apply it to this person, I am applying it to everyone. Yeah.
And I think, the question was also about new managers. I think for new managers, be prepared for the generational dissonance that you may encounter. Something we do see, there's a beautiful, diverse group of people on Broadway, particularly in terms of age. And so when they're put together on teams sometimes, we get a little tension because people are accustomed to doing things the way they've done it on the 200 shows they've worked on. And then you have this new person coming in that wants to do the spreadsheet differently or has an idea. And maybe let them try the idea. Maybe it won't work, but let them try it. Let them learn from a mistake. Or maybe you'll be pleasantly surprised with a new method or way of doing something. But for the new people coming in, be prepared for that and learn how to manage up around it. Because whenever you go into a situation where everybody is set in their ways, if you come in and you're not listening and trying to learn first, that makes more challenge for you.
And one more thing, I feel like I always go back to culture. You have to try and cultivate a culture of belonging and a culture of feedback simultaneously.
Yes,
Because
yes.
when something goes wrong, there's always a disconnect in communication. And if you are not caring about your team, and if you're not inspecting what you expect and supporting them so that they know how to really show up for themselves, not for you, for themselves, and constantly giving them that feedback, then how can they be strong? How can they grow? And they're a reflection of you. You should be able to turn around. You should be able to take a day off. You should be able to take 2 days off. You should be able to know that with confidence, you don't have to worry about certain things if you do right by your team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
From everything that's been said in this conversation, it's clear to see that you both are fierce culture protectors and ambassadors, like Karen says in all of our trainings. And you guys are also equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility facilitators in these spaces. So my question is, in a time when the term DEI is being so weaponized and misunderstood, how do you move forward? How do you work with that?
I ignore all of that. We have to ignore it. It's not, listen, when DEI started being used as a bad word, we had people call us and ask us if we were going to change it on our website, for example. We're a Black woman-owned business. We are absolutely not changing that. We stand by these tenets. We have our own director that we already mentioned. It's the most important, beautiful work that can be done. If we lose that, the whole culture suffers, right? Brian, our EDIA director, always talks about how making the experience equitable for one group makes it equitable for everyone. So if we change that mindset, to me, then we just revert back to a place where it's all based on hierarchy, and it is based on systemic racism, and that's simply not a culture that I want to be a part of, and I will fight that with whatever acronyms we need to use going forward.
And the problems are not going to change.
Yeah.
I'm still going to wake up and be a Black woman. I'm still going to have all these other microaggressions and all these different intersectionalities on privilege. The things don't change, so we can call them Care Bears and dragons and daffodils. they will still be things we have to deal with. They don't go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that also carries into your work as educators. You both are adjunct professors at Columbia University, and I had the pleasure of shadowing you through your course last semester. Can you talk a little about the course you teach and why you feel it's important to implement in their curriculum?
Do you want to start this one?
Yeah, that. Thank you, Jenna. That's so lovely. You know, we realized that there were so many shortcomings on Broadway when it came to HR, and really not just understanding who we are, but how to partner with us and how important we were in this space. So when we got the opportunity, shout out to Stephen Jacobson, when we got the opportunity to help with the up-and-coming leaders in Broadway, we were like, of course. Because if we can catch them in the early parts, then they can really get an understanding of how HR is, how important it is, how they need to advocate for it in spaces. And now we've seen, going into our fourth year, our first year students who are now producers and company managers, and just to see how they're showing up, knowing they have all that knowledge, has been beautiful.
Do you have any parting words for that rare college kid who is interested in working in HR and theater, or even equity, diversity, and inclusion and accessibility work? What do you think are some action steps they can take when they're in these early stages of entering their career?
Kick it off.
I don't know if it's anything unique to say, but effective networking. You know, there aren't a lot of HR professionals across Broadway, so call us. And, you know, networking also across the general management offices and getting feedback from people about what their experience is with HR, what they're looking for, what they think the future of HR might look like on Broadway, and trying to really assess if that's the type of work you want to do, but also know that HR for Broadway is not the side that deals with compliance, benefits, payroll. It's definitely more about employee relations and interpersonal issues. And so just knowing that the skills that you're going to need are going to fall into those areas.
Take our class. That's my advice. First and foremost, you need to know the theory. Take any class that's going to give you the building blocks on the 7 pillars of HR. Like, they need to understand each line of service, with DEI being one of the pillars as well, right? And I think you touched on it, Kiah, the introspection. You have to know if you have the right temperament. Just because you like people does not make you an HR professional. If you know you can't control your temper, if you know that if you know that if it's not the right thing to do, and if you don't get the answer, you're going to get stroppy and all of that, this is not the job for you. If you know that you can't get on one call that is about engagement, and then the next call could be about sexual harassment, and then the next call, and if you know that you cannot change and switch and be that dynamic without losing bits of yourself each and every time, this is not the industry for you, and especially doing it the way the KK does it. But yeah, that's some of the advice I would say.
Also, I have to add, you have to be willing to fight sometimes.
Hard.
You will have company managers, people in management, any level, not wanting to pull someone from the show because opening night's around the corner, but that person's a harasser, right? They may want to pause and give someone a little more grace for, you know, whatever reason, and you have to push and be the person that reminds them of the harm. You have to push and remind them about the jeopardy that the whole production could be in by having even a singular individual continue on the show for a day. You have to be willing to fight.
And you have to remind people, you didn't fire anybody. They fired themselves. They were the ones who took the bad action and got them to this place.
100%. Amazing.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have one more thing to say. The other thing is, everyone is not going to like you. In fact, most people won't like you before you open your mouth because of their systemic views of HR. even if they never even had HR, just their general fear of HR, they're not going to like you, and you just have to know, listen, we're not here for Tonys. We're not here for friends. We're here to do what we believe is right, which is to protect people in their workplace, and you just have to stand steadfast in that belief and not be worried about being liked and having friends, and because that's not what it's about.
100%.
Absolutely. Thank you both for that.
Thank you.
All right. So to close out, we want to make it a tradition to have our lovely guests nominate someone to appear on our show next. So my last question is, who does KK nominate?
We're thinking about this, right?
Yes. Why am I pulling a blank? I told you I wanted to nominate before we.
Yeah.
Linda.
Linda Stewart.
Linda Stewart.
Linda Stewart.
Linda Stewart, if
Hey,
you're out
Linda.
there, you're
You
next.
You got next.
All right, that is all I've got. Thank you both so much for your support and for this conversation today. It's been such a joy.
Oh,
No,
thank you,
Uchenna.
Uchenna.
And it's
Loved
great
it.
to see you in this capacity.
Yes.
So we're super excited about
Thank
your
you.
company.
All right,
Thank you
Kiah
all.
Jones and Karen Robinson, everyone. Bye.